Welcome back, everyone. Continuing on in our project. So we have our input, a controlled component. That is, if the user will write something that will go into the state variable input. Next thing that the user would do will click on this button. And on the click of this button, we would want the text to be stored in the state variable tasks. Let's do that. First of all, the user will click on the button, hence submit the form. So on submit event handler, we won't be setting the state. Instead, we will be calling the dispatch function. Dispatch will take an action object. That action object will take a type. So let's give it a type called add task. Like this. We have to create this add task. Let's go into slice. This is the add task. We have already created it and exported it as an action as well. So just have to import it then like this from the slice. Add task will simply add whatever the user has typed in the text box in the form of an object to the state variable tasks, which is an array. In order to confirm that it has been successfully added to the array, what we can do is we can display the array in the UL by mapping over it. So, init state dot tasks. Let's map over this. Let's call the each object obj. And what we have to do, we have to display an li. We have to return an li, of course, because we are creating the li inside a loop. We'll have to provide it a key. The ID will serve the purpose, and we need to show the text. Let's go into the browser. Let's open them side by side. If I write hello world, okay. So we forgot, I think, to prevent the default submission of the form. Okay. Let's go into the on submit. Let's take the event from React. First, we will simply prevent the default mechanism. And then we will call in the dispatch like this. This will prevent the form from submitting, and our li will be displayed like this. We have the li displayed. Next, we would want the functionality to delete that task, to edit that task. Let's see if we can do that. I will be adding icons for the edit and delete functionality. And for that, let me add a package, React icons. You can add that by npmi React icons, this command. Done. Fantastic. Let's start React again. React icons. If you can Google React icons, you will land up on their website. This one. Let's find what we can use for delete. Whichever one you prefer, I'll take the simple one. So simple copy and paste, nothing fancy. Well, let's take for edit as well. Let's take this one only. Because both are from MD, so we can simply do it like this. MD stands for material design, of course. Now, in the li, let's first have for the icon for delete, MD delete, and let's have MD edit too. Okay, so this looks like something like this. If we add a task, run HTML, there you go. As simple as that. Don't worry about the CSS. We'll add that later. Now, of course, the user will click on the delete icon, will click on the edit icon. That means both of them require on click. As always, dispatch, and that dispatch will take an action type. I will create that in the slice. Let me call handle delete. That handle delete will take the object's ID as argument. We don't need these extra spaces, so let me do it like this. Let's go into slice because we still need handle delete. After add task, let's create an handle delete. Oops, handle delete, DELETE, because it's a reducer, the current state, and the action object. What we can do, as I mentioned in the previous video, why I am modifying the state variable synchronously, that is why I am doing state tasks equal, is due to the library called immer. That is helping me write synchronous code. Behind the scenes, yes, the same thing is happening. That is, the React update is happening asynchronously. Immer simply helps us write those asynchronous tasks in a synchronous way. Okay, so what we can do to delete? Well, as always, we can use filter. So state.tasks, sorry, state.tasks.filter. Let's call it a task. So if the task's ID matches the action.id, action.id is what we passed as argument to the action handle delete. This will be the ID. Return all those tasks, those whose ID matches, and if the ID does not match, filter out that task, leaving only the rest of the task, hence deleting that particular task. Let's see if it works out. Let's try and delete this one. Okay. Oh. Handle delete is not defined here. We have to export it as an action from here. Handle delete and import it in the UI. Now, hopefully it will work. Okay. No errors. Fantastic. Okay, let's see what we are actually clicking. Well, yes, we are clicking what we want. Okay. So dispatch object ID, handle delete. Spellings are correct. Okay, let's have a console log to figure out what's happening. Let's add a task. And, well, yes, okay. State.task.filter. So we are returning those tasks whose ID do not match action.id. Whatever filter returns, we are putting it back again in tasks. Looks fine, doesn't it? Okay, and what are we passing? We are passing, yes, that particular object's ID. Okay, let's see whether we have the ID or not. The case might be the case that we are not getting action ID. It shouldn't be undefined. See? Okay, so action.id is undefined. Okay, I think I found a mistake. It should be action.payload. Let's see if we can get that ID now. Oh, yes. Sorry, my mistake. It should be action.payload. Let's see if we can finally delete our task. And we are. Oh, this should be blank. Nah? It's better user experience. This should be blank. Well, as soon as one adds a task, the input should go blank. In order for the input to be blank, in the add task reducer function, what we can do is we can simply say this state.input should be blank again. This will simply clear out the text box, the input box. Run HTML and delete is working. In order for having the focus back into it, you need to have a ref variable. I'm leaving that for you. Okay, so we have the delete functionality. Let's say if we type something wrong, naturally we would want to edit that. Edit will be done in two parts. First, when the user clicks this icon, first thing is this task should be in the input box. Let's create the slice first, the reducer function in slice first, handle edit. It will be a function which will take the current state and the action object. So the first thing that we will do is we want the text in the input. So what we'll do is we'll first figure out of the tasks array, which task the user wants to edit, and we can do that with the help of find. Because we will have the ID of that task which the user wants to edit in action.payload, we can figure out which task object that is by comparing the IDs. So if task.id matches action.payload, we will simply return that particular task as not state.task, but okay, let's do it as task to edit. Task to edit will be that particular task object whose text property, whose text key we want to edit. In order to edit that text key, it has to be first in the input. So what we'll do is we will simply say state.input should be equal task to edits text. This will put the incorrect text into the text box, into the input. And what we also want to do is the action ID, we have to make it global. We have to make it global so that we can use it in this particular function. In order to make the action ID, the action payload global, we will put that in the state variable edit ID. So state.edit ID will be equal action.payload. So what we have, and yes. And because the next thing what we are doing is editing the text, incorrect text in the input, let's also do this. Edit ID is editing. Let's toggle it to be true. So what will happen when the user will click the pencil icon? Well, nothing as of now, because we have to first export it from here and then use it in our UI like so. On click, we'll first call the dispatch. Dispatch will then call that handle edit, and we will pass the ID, which is obj.id. Now, when the user will click something, let's say I'm purposely making it wrong. When we'll click the pencil icon, three things will happen. First, this text will go into the text box, into the input. Second, its ID will be made global, will be put into this variable. And third, this variable will be set to true. Now, when I click this icon, yes, the text went in here and is editing was set to true. Why did we set is editing to true? For two reasons. One, when the user is editing this, the button here it will say edit task or update task instead of add task. In order to do that, let's come into the UI. Let's say if init state dot is editing, if it is true, let the button space say update task. If it is not, then say add task. So it is now saying update task. Now, well, whatever the button's face says, the button is the same, and we have already said that whenever you'll click this button, that is when you will submit the function, add task is the function, the reducer function that will execute. So after correcting this, after correcting the spelling, when we click this button, we want the task to be edited, the task to be modified. We have to add something to this function. So now we will need to modify this add task function. And modify it how? This add task function will be called in two scenarios, one when we actually want to add a new task and one we are updating. Accordingly, we will say if the is editing variable is true, then do this, otherwise do this. Note I have kept this thing out of both the if else's because in either cases, I want the text box to be empty when I'm adding a task or when I'm editing a task. I want the input to be emptied in both the cases. So if the is editing variable is not true, if it is false, that is when we want to add a new task, well, this is what we will be doing. If we are editing a task, we are updating a task, we do not want to add a new object. Rather, we want to first find the object that we want to edit and we want to make the changes inside of that and put that again into the tasks array. What we'll do in that case? So we'll say state.tasks. We'll simply map out the tasks. First, we will match each of the tasks with the help of the ID. So if task ID is equal to the global edit ID, there can be two cases, either the ID matches or it doesn't. If the ID does not match, we'll simply put that task, put that object as is. We will not modify that. However, if the ID matches, instead of the pre-existing task object, we will send a new object of our own in which we will spread all the properties from the previous object. And then in the text key, we will put whatever modified value user has put in the text box, that is whatever value in the input state variable. And whatever the map will return, the array, the modified array, which the map will return, we will put that in state.tasks. Well, as simple as that. After doing this, we also want to reset the variables edit ID and is editing to their original values, which were the edit ID was initially null, so we'll reset it to null. Actually, we have to do that outside this map. So state.edit ID, we'll reset it to null, and we will reset the is editing again to false. As I mentioned, input will be blank in both the cases. Well, let's see whether our add, delete, edit all work as according to what we want or not. So let's try and add something. Learn HTML. Fine. Let's say learn CSS. Okay, let's also say learn JS. Let's say learn React. Now, naturally, I would want to modify this. Fine. Let's say learn React. Let's click on update. Okay. What is happening? Edit ID is not defined on line 20. It should be state.edit ID. Well, these things happen. Okay. Learn HTML. Hopefully it should work now. Learn JS. Learn React. Let's say instead of JS, we want to write the full name JavaScript. So we'll modify this to JavaScript. Input is not defined on line 20. Okay, that should also be state.input. Okay, let's see task ID, state.id, task text, state.input. Yeah, looks fine now. One last time. Well, there you go. Okay, let's also check whether we are able to add a new task or not now. We very well are. Okay, let's delete this one. And we can, let's say, learn Tailwind. There you go. Guys, with this example, what we understand is how basic Redux application works. What is a store? How and where do we put the state and all the reducer functions? How the store takes in reducers from the slice? How you can call the state in your UI, the reducer functions in the UI, how the action creators are created, how you pass type to them, how you pass payload. This was a very basic application to understand Redux. In the next video, we will try and understand how we can work with APIs in Redux. That is, we will try and understand async reducer functions with the help of async thunk. Till next time, thank you.